Newstalk 660.
It will be found an
KFAR.
unjust and unwise jealousy to deprive a man of his natural liberty upon the supposition he may abuse it. George Washington.
They who would give up an essential liberty for temporary security deserve neither liberty or security. Benjamin Franklin.
The Constitution is not an instrument for the government to restrain the people. It is an instrument for the people to restrain the government, lest it come to dominate our lives and interests. Patrick Henry.
America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it would be because we destroyed ourselves. Abraham Lincoln.
I predict future happiness for Americans if they can prevent the government from wasting the labors of the people under the pretense of taking care of them. Thomas Jefferson.
Property is surely a right of mankind as real as liberty. John Adams.
The Constitution is the guide which I never will abandon. George Washington.
Welcome to the Saturday morning wake-up call. This is hour one of Patriots Lament right here on KFAR. We are local talk radio, 660 on your AM dial in Fairbanks, Alaska, but streaming live around the world on KFAR660.com and available on your smartphone with the free TuneIn Radio app. I am Steve Floyd, the monkey behind the machine, here to make sure that the message gets out there on the air. Joining us, as always, here in the studio this morning from Bighorn Enterprises, Josh Bennett. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, good to have you here today. You've also got one of your progeny here in the studio with us today. Good morning, sir. You're going to be on the mic today?
Yeah.
All right, let me make sure I've actually got your mic working. Try that again.
Hello.
All right,
Hello.
well, there we go. Now we got it. It's always fun when somebody comes in and moves my knobs. Makes me so happy. What's that?
Move them around.
Move them around. Yes, indeed, sir. All right. Where do we go today? You got a big flaming stick for somebody's hornet's nest?
Oh, yeah. We have a guest in about 8 minutes. Yeah. But until then, I think the borough is talking about something right now where they're talking about taking property. If someone doesn't pay their property tax, they're talking about taking it for public use and using that property for the use of the public, and therefore they would wipe out the person's tax bill, but they wouldn't get any benefit beyond just their tax bill. So if you owned a $50,000 place and you owed $2,000 in taxes, couldn't pay it, and they take it for public use, that's all that you would get. It's just that your $2,000 tax bill would be relieved. Whereas right now, they sell your property and anything over your tax bill goes to you. I, of course, loathe property tax in any form. Any tax, actually, but property tax just boggles my mind. So, while we're waiting to give our guest a call, I'm going to read about private property. And I wish that borough assembly peoples would actually read something about private property. It would do them well to understand the oath of office that they took when they took office as a borough assembly person. But as we all know, they're dumb, ignorant retards. So, whilst they can be done...
That's not very nice to say.
I forgot retards taken out of the...
Well, no, I think retards are much smarter than the people who are over there in the borough.
That's true.
I don't think it's entirely fair at all to people who have a handicap.
I wasn't denigrating handicapped folks. I was merely pointing out that I dislike the borough assembly people, who should and ought to be mocked daily. I mean, you have dumb people over there making decisions for smart people. It just boggles my mind. They think they're pretty smart. So, James Madison, who was, they called the father of the Constitution, wrote extensively about private property. So, we always say that we like to give education on the show. So this is what we're going to do today. Bear with me. If you don't like it, turn the radio off. Oh, you got both sides. Sweet. This term, this is property. James Madison, document 23. This term in its particular application means a dominion which one man claims and exercises over the external things of the world, in inclusion of every other individual. Exclusion of every other. I just pulled a commie there. In its larger and juster meaning, it embraces everything to which a man may attach a value and have a right. We're talking about property. So in the larger and just meaning of property is its embrace everything to which a man may attach a value and have a right to, which leaves to everyone else the like advantage. In the former sense, a man's land or merchandise or money is called his property. In the latter sense, and this is the one we're mostly trying to get people to understand, in the latter sense, a man has a property to his opinions and the free communication of them. He has a property of particular value in his religious opinions, in his profession and practice dictated by them. So, he's saying that everything about you is property. Your religious values, your religious beliefs, your opinions, your communications, your land, your merchandise, your money. That's why property rights were so important. Protection of property is everything about you. He has a property very dear to him in the safety and the liberty of his person. He's an equal property in the free use of his faculties and free choice of the objects on which to employ them. In a word, as a man is said to have the right to his property, this was written in 1792, March 27th, I believe. In words, as a man is said to have right to his property, he may equally be said to have a property of his rights. I'm going to read that again. Understand. A man is said to have a right to his property. He is equally to be said to have a property in his rights. Where all excess of power prevails, property of no sort is duly respected. No man is safe in his opinions, his person, his faculties, or his possessions, where the excess of power prevails. So, excess of power, when a borough government can take your private property, land, for not paying taxes, Madison is saying that none is safe, your opinions, your person, your faculties, or your possessions, because all property is you. Where there is an excess of liberty, the effect is the same, though from an opposite cause. Government is instituted to protect property of every sort, as well that lies in the various rights of individuals, as that which the term particularly expresses. This is the end of government. That alone is a just government which impartially secures to every man whatever is his own. According to this standard of merit, the praise of affording a just securing to property should be sparingly bestowed on government, which, however scrupulously guarding the possessions of individuals, does not protect them in the enjoyment and the communications of their opinions, in which they have an equal and, in the estimation of some, more valuable property. That's basically the right to free speech. If you don't have the right to free speech and your property is your speech is your property. So he's saying, even if you live somewhere where they protect your lands, but they don't protect your speech and your thought, you don't have property rights. Oh, I like this one. More sparingly should this praise be allowed to a government where man's religious rights are violated by penalties or fettered by test or taxed by a hierarchy. Conscience is the most sacred of all property. Other property depending in part of the positive law, the exercise of that being a natural and unalienable right. To guard a man's house as his castle, to pay public and enforce private debts with the most exact faith, can give no title to invade a man's conscience, which is more sacred than his castle, or to withhold from it the debt of protection, for which the public faith is pledged by the very nature and original conditions of the social pact. He goes on, we don't got enough time, to talk about, let's see. Okay, this is specifically what the borough is talking about, taking private property, giving it to the public without just compensation. Madison goes on and says, if there be a government, then, which prides itself in maintaining the inviolability of property, which provides that none shall be taken directly, even for public use, without indemnification to the owner, and yet directly violates that property which the individuals have in their opinions, their religions, their persons, and their faculties, nay more, which indirectly violates their property in their actual possessions. So he flat out said it. So the borough over here is going to have a debate over whether they can take your property. Madison says that would to be an unjust government. Unequal taxes oppress one species. A just security to property is not afforded by that government, under which unequal taxes oppress one species of property and reward another species, where arbitrary taxes invade the domestic sanctuaries of the rich, and excessive taxes grind the faces of the poor. Where the keenness and competitions of want are deemed an insufficient spur to labor, taxes are again applied by an unfeeling policy as another spur in violation of that sacred property, which heaven, in decreeing man to earn his bread by the sweat of his brow, kindly reserved to him, and the small repose that could be spared by the supply of his necessity. All right, we got our guest on, hopefully.
We do indeed. We would like to welcome Sheldon Richman to the program. Good morning, Sheldon.
Hello.
All right.
Very happy to be with you.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming on. Sheldon is... we wanted to have Sheldon on because he is he's a left libertarian. And I thought that would be fun just to, right off the bat.
You do want to take a flaming stick to the nearest hornet's nest, don't you?
Yeah, I can hear the neocons right now going, he's got a communist on there. Oh, my God. Which we know is far from that. Sheldon,
I'm a communist the way Friedrich Bastiat was a communist.
Nice. Sheldon is his blog is Free Association at Sheldon Free Association at blogspot.com, and you also are a contributor to Reason magazine, right?
Yes, they republish a couple of my I do 2 weekly articles for the Future of Freedom Foundation, where I'm vice president and also editor of the monthly publication called Future of Freedom. And so I do 2 articles a week, which Reason very nicely reposts.
That's awesome. We just want to get right into it because we don't have you forever. So we're market anarchists, free market economy, and people like to call in here and they basically think that, the free market, if we really have that, and this anarchism, basically would just allow the big rich folks to trample on the poor little folks that don't have money. They wouldn't have any protection. They wouldn't have this, and we need the state. The reason we need the state is because the state's the one that protects that little guy. If we didn't have the state, well, the big corporation. Oh, wait a minute, they already do. The big rich people would destroy the little people. Could you tell us what's the correct opinion on that? Because obviously, we don't believe in that at all. So could you tell us, just give us, correct us?
Sure. Well, anyone who takes that position is not doing very good historical or political analysis. Because if you look at the source of corporate power, which they claim to be so concerned about, it is the state. Show me an example where corporate power has arisen in the absence of states or with a weak state. It doesn't happen. It's what I call this the most dangerous derivative. Corporate power is derived from state power through subsidies, through limits on competition, which can be which can be covert but also overt. Land grants, patents, other intellectual property, tariffs, and other restrictions on foreign competition, anything that protects incumbent firms, and these tend to be the bigger ones who are well-connected politically, is going to lead to the kind of oppression that the left says they care about. What makes a left libertarian, and as I see it, is that the left libertarian agrees with generally with the historical concerns of the left about vulnerable groups like workers, minorities, women, immigrants, but understands that the source of their oppression is state power, even if it's being carried out by what look like private firms or private interests, nominally private interests, because again, that power is derived from the state, from state privileges, from state limits on competition, and other kinds of limitations on freedom.
So how would it look in a pure free? I mean, people say, "Well, we live in a free market economy now, and look what it's doing," and blah blah. And obviously, you just pointed that out that we don't. We live in a corporatist state, basically a fascist state.
Yeah.
So how would that work without it? What would protect the poor people? Why? How would the rich man not be able to just stomp on the poor guy?
Well, if the state is the source of the oppression, then it looks a little odd to look to the state as the source of salvation for the oppressed groups. I mean, gosh, it's like a little strychnine's hurting you, so here, let me give you a big dose of it. That doesn't make any sense. And this is what Noam Chomsky is so guilty of, right? He claims to be an anarchist. I assume that's a sincere claim. But he says, in the meanwhile, we have to really bolster the power of the central state. I don't quite see the logic of that. Because at other times he understands that big business, for example, would never want laissez-faire, would not want all this state power taken away. So he sees that at some times. He'd say, well, of course big business doesn't want free trade. On the other hand, he acts like the big business would prosper if the state were to, wither away or be radically diminished. So, but there's no way in a free market anarchist environment that someone can amass the kind of power that you can get by lobbying Congress or regulatory agencies or whatever for anti-competitive favors. You only have to look at the great historical work by Gabriel Kolko, who is a new left historian. He's not a young man, but I mean he was from that the crop of new left historians that arose in the 60s and 70s, who showed that as the 19th century was coming to an end, even though there had been a lot of corporatist kind of interventions, it still was very hard to tame a freeish market, a market that had a good dose of freedom in it, and that efforts to monopolize industry were failing miserably as the 19th century was coming to a close. J.P. Morgan and other big business magnates tried to form conglomerations and various kinds of mergers to maintain market share, and you get U.S. Steel and other big companies, AT&T, come out of this movement, and it's a failure. They're losing market share. And so what Kolko shows is that at that point, as the 20th century is coming on, they turn to the state, and that the progressive reforms, which are portrayed as being a way to tame business, are actually motivated by the major business interests as a way of controlling upstart competition and conserving the market share of the established firms, and that's what happens. So in a free market environment where you don't have a state to turn to, what you're going to have is decentralized competition, and that's the best protection for workers and consumers. Because if there are many people competing for your labor, let us say, that gives you much more clout than if there's not so much competition. Plus, there's always alternatives from worker ownership and from self-employment or small partnerships. So if you don't want to work for someone else, you can thumb your nose and say, I'll try to start my own business, because you don't have zoning blocking you, intellectual property blocking you, and all these other measures that make it very hard, but make it impossible, but make it very hard to build your own business.
Yeah, I think people don't understand the cost of entry is so high because of the state. And people can't, I guess, visualize or internalize or something if that state isn't there. When we get on here and we talk about imagine there is no state, people just can't do it because, well, how would this? Well, how would that? Well, everything you're talking about is a statist point of view because the state is involved in every single aspect that you're talking about. If you wipe that out, none of these questions are even relevant anymore.
Right. And let me mention also occupational licensing. I missed a big one there.
Yeah.
I mean, how many? I mean, it's increasing all the time, but hundreds and hundreds of occupations are I won't say totally closed, but the barriers are very high because you have to spend thousands of dollars in some cases to go to school, get the certification, take the exam, and who's running those bureaus? The incumbent members of the profession or the occupation.
Yep. No,
you can't become a florist in Louisiana without getting a license. Well, who determines who gets the licenses? The people who are already in the industry, in the business.
You even just want to do business at all. I mean, they busted a kid here in Fairbanks for selling lemonade without a business license. And you know who it was that called the cops on them? It was the other business owners downtown.
Uh-huh. You're right, and then the persecution of street vendors is notorious throughout the country, and so it's very obvious. So this is what I find so frustrating about the leftists who say, yeah, they're anarchists, and but before we can have anarchy, we have to have an all-powerful government. I don't quite understand that logic, and I don't see why they're willing to take the chance. It reminds me a little bit, back in the days when Marx was still writing, you had left anarchists say, now, Carl, this dictatorship of the proletariat is going to become the dictatorship over the proletariat and is not going to wither away. And guess what? Marx was wrong on that. I mean, the Soviet Union eventually withered away, but how many millions had to die before it finally fell apart in 1991? So, I would love to hear what a good faith leftist, non-market leftist has to say about this, because the historical evidence is very strong about who wanted the government intervention. Look, who's ending up writing the rules about Dodd-Frank for finance? Who's in there? Are you and I close to the financial regulators to help influence the writing of the rules? Or poor people? Of course not. Or regular working people? No, they're nowhere near it. Who's got a comparative advantage in navigating the halls of power? It's not the regular people the left say they care about. It's going to be the most influential business people. Same thing with the so-called medical reform. Yeah, the insurance companies are doing great. They got compulsory customers with this mandate. And then, meanwhile, we have an insurance cartel in every state and a medical cartel. There's no free market. So if you're going to look for the culprit in how in the oppression of regular people, you're not going to look at any. It's not any private interest acting on its own that's bringing this about. It's state power.
Even look at the vice president Monsanto was just put to be the head of the, what is it, No.
FTA?
FTA, yep. Here, just in the last couple of weeks.
The government agency that controls whether or not a food gets a license. And, it's a person who has a large financial interest in making sure that his product gets a food license. That's remarkable.
Right.
How on earth could that possibly happen?
And the problem is that people see that as free market.
That's right. Free market, they think, means business runs the regulatory agency. Well, what a joke. And look at Obama, who Republicans like to portray as the most radical president we've ever had, has done that very same thing over and over again. Appointees are from Wall Street, and or the oil industry, or you've seen those Venn diagrams that people put up on Facebook and the internet that show the intersection of big business and government. This is all happening under Obama, and yet you have people like Newt Gingrich say he's the most radical. I mean, what a joke! The most radical president. He's the most corporatist president, maybe, whereas corporatist as any president we've had. He's right out of the mold. And yet the left can't quite bring themselves to say, he's just like most other presidents of our lifetime. No difference. No different. In fact, he's worse though, because he's fooled some people into thinking he's some kind of progressive, and meanwhile, look at all the stuff he does. He's given this big favor to the medical insurance companies, for one thing.
Yeah. How about we had a guy call. I'd spoken to you about this a little bit. One of the things that he was ranting about was the evil middle-class Americas, and Americans are the reason that China, the people in China, are working for $1 an hour, whatever they are right now. And we try to point out, no, it's the state of China, the Chinese state, that's put them in oppression. But I hear that when I say the left, I want to mean like the modern left, the modern liberals, or whatever you want to call them. What is our relationship? What is the consumer in America's relationship to the Chinese factory worker? Are the American consumer the ones that are putting these people in the chains? Because I'm really interested in what your point of view of that is, because I've been thinking about it all week, and I thought, well, if you look at North Korea, they don't have any kind of industry. American consumers don't buy anything from them, and they live much worse than the Chinese worker does. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I did an article not too long ago about Bangladesh, where they've had a couple of very bad events with industry. I guess the textile factories. One burned down, and one had a building collapse not long ago, and over 1,000 people died in the two incidents combined. And so there's been more attention to that, because those factories were making cheap clothing, which I guess end up in American retail stores.
Sheldon, we got to cut you off for 1 minute. Can you hang on with us?
Yes, I can.
We'll be right back after the Fox News with more of Hour 1 of Patriots Lament. We call it the Saturday Morning Wake Up Call right here on KFAR, online at KFAR660.com. Join us in the chat room and speak your mind right here on Local Talk Radio 660 AM.
Getting on the home for Fox News in Fairbanks, KFAR.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Colorado's Black Forest Fire now 30% contained, thanks in part to weather conditions.
Today's strategy is to mop up large areas around existing structures, the ones that have made it so far. They really need to clear out those areas just in case there are some flare-ups. If the wind turn around and start attacking those homes, because that's what they've been seeing happen all throughout the week.
Fox's Alicia Acuna, 473 homes have been lost. As they struggle with fallout from disclosures of a secret government data collection program, Facebook and Microsoft striking agreements with Uncle Sam to release limited information about the number of surveillance requests they receive. And in Great Britain, on Fox Sister Network Sky News, celebrations for the official birthday of Queen Elizabeth II. She actually turned 87 back in April. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Did you miss this week's Shooter's Corner? Archive shows for the last month online at KFAR660.com.
Don't want to be an American idiot. Don't want a nation.
And welcome back to Hour 1 of Patriots Lent. We call it the Saturday Morning Wake Up Call. We are joined today by a special guest by phone. We've got Sheldon Richman on the line with us. Sheldon is a self-described left libertarian. Sheldon, you still with us?
Yes, I am.
All right. Now, before the Fox News there at the bottom of the hour, you were talking about Bangladesh and about the protections or lack thereof for workers.
Yes, and then in the developing world generally, there's this controversy of poor working conditions and low wages, and so it's a little complicated. So I'll take a moment to kind of quickly give you my take on this. Look, it's certainly the case that these factories generally pay more than other employment opportunities offer to people in China and Bangladesh and these other places. By the way, a lot of this is shifting now from China to places like Bangladesh. In other words, the wages are too high in China comparatively. So, things aren't the way they were, say, 10, 20 years ago when China was the place. So they offer attractive opportunity. And, people generally aren't compelled to work there. They go to work for those sectors. But there's a bigger picture that we can't, that sometimes generally free market people overlook. They leave it at that. They say, look, sweatshops, yeah, it may be bad, but don't forget those are poor countries. They're still accumulating wealth. And if you were to close those sweatshops, or if we were to boycott them in the West, the point where they had to close down, those people would have to turn to even worse work, lower pay, harder work, or even prostitution or other kind of life in the streets. That is true as far as it goes. The problem is that the reason there aren't other alternatives for employment is that the state doesn't permit it. In a lot of those countries, in most of those countries, the land is dominated by the well-connected again, in almost like a feudal setup. This is true in Bangladesh. It can be very difficult for just an average person to try to start a business, again, because the people that are already in don't want new people coming in, because it presents competition and lowers profits. So there are corporatist, or what we're going to call mercantilist, really a throwback, mercantilist systems in place that hurt just regular people who may choose not to work in one of the big factories because they just don't like it, and they want to either work for themselves or work on the land. But if they can't do that, then they turn to what looks like the best alternative. But the fact that it's the best alternative in that context, it should not satisfy us, because they would have other alternatives if the government didn't define the context the way it did. And sometimes those governments over there do work together with Western companies or other big businessmen to create that bad situation. So I can't give you a simple answer.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we should boycott, because again, in the present context, if all those places close down, those people would be worse off. But we should publicize the fact that people would have better opportunities if they could radically reform their systems. And hopefully the people there will decide that they need radical land reform. In other words, land should be owned by the people who work it, not by big absentee landlords who were given huge tracts of land by political authorities as favors. That's typically how those big estates got formed. So I'm entirely sympathetic with the workers, but I don't stop the analysis at they've accepted the best possible opportunity, or else they wouldn't have gone to work there. I mean, if you leave it at that, we're not telling the whole story.
Right. Well, and it is not to blame other workers for their. You can't blame workers in America for the poverty of the workers in Bangladesh or China, because it's the state on either end that's putting the restrictions on. I mean, obviously, they're communists. China's communism, and they don't allow free entry. They don't allow anything. Everything is for the state.
Well, it's more open than, of course, it used to be.
Yeah.
Politically, it's not very free. Economically, at least in some provinces, it's much more than it was. But it is not, anything close to the free market.
No.
And as long as that's the case, it's competition that ultimately protects people, freedom and competition. Because people and see, the left generally doesn't like the idea of competition. They think, that just sounds so antagonistic. Can't we have cooperation? But the way I like to explain it is, cooperation and competition are two sides of the same coin. They're not separate. They're not in opposition to each other. Because if you're free to decide who you want to cooperate with, then you have competition, right? If I walk into a mall and I want to buy shoes, and there's two stores there, and they each want to sell me shoes, they're vying to be the one who cooperates with me, right, in my acquisition of shoes. But with each other, they're competing. So competition and cooperation go together. It's not like we can abolish competition and have cooperation. That's not what would be the result.
When you abolish competition, you get monopoly.
Right, and monopoly is not cooperation. That's like compulsory cooperation, which doesn't sound very nice to me.
Well, it's like all of
anything.
all of the co-ops, the cooperatives that we have across the country with electricity. All of these different power companies, they're supposedly cooperatives, and yet it's a monopoly. You cannot choose to generate your own electricity, nor can you choose to get your electricity from anywhere else.
Right. Look, as the radical libertarians of the late 19th century in America, who, like Benjamin Tucker, who, by the way, called himself a socialist at the time, as they pointed out, you need competition in order to protect individual workers and consumers, because it's protectionism. I don't just mean against foreign competition, but any kind of protectionism is what oppresses people, because it limits their opportunities, it removes their bargaining power, and it makes them have to submit because they don't have choices. It's freedom that leads to competition, and competition leads to choice and cooperation, and that's what liberates people.
Right, what we have now is on the liberal, well, actually either side, is the egalitarianism of the equal outcome. Instead of having equal rights and opportunity from a free market, they just want to see, well, the outcome, everyone's the same. What is your...
Of course, but that's more window dressing, because there's not even any real attempt at equal outcome either.
No.
I mean, some of these so-called redistributionist programs are in my view, are ways to just mollify people, right? To give them something. Look, they've been hurt by the corporatism, so then the politicians and the inside interests say, well, let's throw the people who have been hurt by this some favor, so they won't rise up and overthrow the system. So one of my left libertarian colleagues puts this as, the government breaks your knees, and then it looks magnanimous when it dispenses crutches. That's what those programs, redistribution programs, are all about. They're just a way to take pressure off the real action that's going on, which is the favoritism and the anti-competitive corporatism.
Would you gotta get my senses here, because there's so many things I want to ask you. Would you give us a quick thought on Edward Snowden right now? The right is, and even I heard the Attorney General Eric Holder was saying, we're going to get him, and you hear people on the right and in the radio, well, this guy, he betrayed his country, he's treacherous, he's treasonous. But what's your opinion on him? On that
I put on Twitter and Facebook that he's only a traitor if the government is the country. In other words, in my view, he didn't betray the country. If that would mean the American people in general. He only exposed government wrongdoing, and so I think he did a very courageous thing, because he kind of killed his career there. I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen to the guy? I doubt if he'll be back in the United States unless they capture him and bring him back. So I think he did a heroic thing, because he, in the spirit of Daniel Ellsberg and Bradley Manning, he told us how widespread the government spying is. And all this stuff about trying to, there's been Freudian psychoanalysis of a guy. If you read like David Brooks in the New York Times, you'll read about how he didn't spend time at his mother's house. I mean, there's all kinds of stupid things taking our attention off what it is he exposed.
Yeah.
Except to thank him, why are we even talking about Snowden? We should be talking about what it is he exposed. Mm-hmm. He did a courageous thing, just like Ellsberg did, like Manning did, and these other whistleblowers. Now, it's really funny, getting back to Obama, here he is going after whistleblowers like no previous president has ever done, more than all the presidents combined, invoking the Espionage Act. And this talk that Snowden is a traitor is ridiculous, because he didn't aid the enemies of the United States, whatever exactly that may mean. He aided the American people. He told them how widespread government spying is. This vacuuming up of data about phone calls and monitoring of internet activity, and all the talking points coming out from the powers that be are nonsense. Oh, that if there's congressional oversight, we know that's nonsense, congressional oversight. First of all, two senators who've been very concerned about this, who get the briefings, aren't even allowed to talk about it. They've tried in veiled ways to warn about it for years. What did it get them? Nothing. And when they say there's court oversight, that's even a worse fallacy, because it's a closed court, private court, that in 40 years has turned the government down 11 times. So the FISA court is not a real court. They may be called judges to guide the people on there, but that doesn't make it a real court. So this idea that there's this is all legal and checked by other branches of government is total nonsense. So no, we have to. I agree with Ron Paul that Snowden is a hero.
Yeah, and hopefully he doesn't get zapped by a drone.
Well, Snowden, he did supply information to enemies of the state. He gave it to the American people.
Well, the American people. That's right. That's a good way to look at it. I mean, I take the view that the U.S. government is an occupying power. It occupies North America, and we are oppressed by it. So I want to be free of this occupying power.
Yeah, Sheldon, you just heard the voice of Aaron Bennett, Josh's brother, who kind of snuck in here during the break. Do you mind if I ask a follow-on question here about something that you said earlier, Sheldon? In terms of oppression and the way in which government rewards those who cooperate with government, or those who are, I should say more specifically, those who cooperate with those in power. And you talked about huge tracts of land being given away as political favor. Here in the Fairbanks area, we just had the borough authorize the sale of a very, very large tract of land, which currently belongs to the borough, public land, which is a ridiculous concept in the first place. But they've authorized the sale to one person. It didn't go up for bid. There's no discussion on opening up that area for other people to go in and buy recreational cabins. This area is being sold as a giant tract to a person who has a resort in the area. And now I'm curious to know from a left perspective, in terms of what you describe yourself, how does that oppress somebody, and who's the one doing the oppressing?
Well, it sounds like collusion between the borough government and the buyer, and it's to the disadvantage of anyone who might have homesteaded a reasonable quantity of the land and built a cabin or used it to for some other purpose, build a business. That's a classic old style act of favoritism by the state, and a lot of land, especially out your way in the west, the western part of the U.S., a lot of land is held by government, and historically, a lot of land which hasn't even been improved was the result of grants, and is continued to still be held out of use, which of course increases the value of the remaining land. And produces wealth for insiders. So it's interesting to hear that sort of thing's still going on.
It's almost like 1700 Americas where the kings are giving land grants to the privileged again. It's like isn't it like 1,250 acres?
Mm-hmm. No, it's bigger than that. I think it's over 2,000.
Wow. Either way, even if it's half an acre, it's still wrong.
Yeah, shades of the 19th century when the government was giving away huge amounts of land to the railroad, and like 15 miles on either side of the track path, and they did very well in reselling it. Land speculation and speculation in government debt are two of the oldest professions, I guess.
And that's how J.P. Morgan really made his money. You mentioned J.P. Morgan earlier. He didn't make his money through good old-fashioned entrepreneurialism and capitalism. He made his money by speculation on government and gold. Yeah, and it's true of others too. The Civil War, was a huge source of profits and fortunes for people who then were sometimes lauded as the great entrepreneurs of the 19th century, but they got a bit of a head start, against everybody else because they made fortunes through government contracts and government debt. Randolph Bourne famously said, "War is the health of the state," and we should include civil war in that. So when we look at the the second half of the 19th century, which many libertarians think was the closest thing we've had to laissez-faire, they seem to forget that right before that there was a civil war, and civil wars is a source of contracts and other forms of largesse that then. Those fortunes were then taken into the post-war period and provided benefits that people who didn't have political connections couldn't get.
I think that's Jim on the other line. Can we bring him on?
We're going to try this. Sheldon, if something happens and we disconnect you, we will get a hold of you again here really shortly. Let's see if we can make this work. All right. Looks like we've got him. Good morning.
Good morning. This is Jim in Kenai.
Jim in Kenai. Thanks for calling in. What's your question this morning?
Well, I really enjoy listening to the left libertarians. The seesaw or the saw action with the left and right statist only brings us tyranny because they end up working together to advance the state. But the action between the left and the right market anarchists does a good job of advancing freedom and understanding how freedom addresses all of our problems. So I love listening to Sheldon because as roughly a right market anarchist, he can see into my blind spots, the things I hadn't considered. I really don't have a question. I just was really enjoying the conversation.
Oh, thanks. Well, I appreciate that.
Thanks,
absolutely. That's great.
No, I'm curious, Jim, you still on there?
Yes.
All right. Now, let me ask you to get into this conversation here a little bit. Coming from the right perspective versus coming from the left perspective, where we meet in the middle toward the idea of freedom, what would it look like in terms of having a person who owns a business or who wants to start a business, say coming from the right perspective of saying, here I am with this capital, versus you, Sheldon, somebody coming from the left perspective saying, hey, I want to make sure that these people who are going to go working for you aren't going to get taken advantage of. How do the two of you come together to use that term that you used earlier, cooperate, so that you, Jim, as the business owner, and you, Sheldon, as the workers advocate, both are happy?
Well, I assume Jim and I want the same political legal environment, which would be laissez-faire and without a state. I'm going to be happy with the outcome of that because there won't be any state favors. If there's no state, there's no state favors. And if people, I'm not against, in principle, people working for other people or people hiring other people, as long as it's consensual and as long as other opportunities have not been closed off because of state intervention. Some left libertarians, I don't know a left libertarian who would seek to abolish wage labor, because first of all, if they're anarchists, how do you do that? But they clearly don't like it. Now, my attitude is, in most cases, I don't see why someone. I realize there's headache involved if you own your own business. You have responsibilities you don't have otherwise if you're working for someone else, or if you're in a worker-owned firm and you're part of the management. Again, you may have responsibilities you wouldn't have otherwise if you're just working for someone else. On the other hand, if you're working for someone else, you are to some extent subject to the arbitrary will of the employer, and he could decide various. Perhaps he could just fire you one day without any notice. I mean, you might want to negotiate some kind of procedure where you can't just get fired without any, one morning without just out of the blue, things like that. So wage labor does have a cost in the sense that you are kind of under the thumb, so to speak, of the employer. So what? In a free, laissez-faire environment, there are going to be alternatives, so that if you don't want to do that, you can turn to some other form of making a living.
Right? Isn't the purest form of combating that would be to start an identical business and set it up the way you want it?
Well, it may not be have to be identical, but the point is you'll have options.
I mean competing one. If you don't like the way things are so much, you could steal all those employees, so to speak, if you have this perfect environment for them. I mean, that would be the ultimate answer to the left's idea of oppression.
But where does he get the capital to start up that other business, that competing business?
Well, he may not have it.
You may go to a bank and say, I see an opportunity here where I can pay a slightly lesser wage rate in exchange for better working conditions. Better working conditions being defined as higher security or less arbitrariness.
Sure.
And also, not everyone wants to start their own business. Everyone has different time preferences. Some people want to get paid every day at the end of every week. Some business owners say, well, I'm willing to forego instant gratification because hopefully the fruits of our labor here in a year I'll benefit from. So, but that goes back to the freedom part. You're free to go after that which you most value. If you value getting paid every day, then that's the job you're going to go for.
No, I agree with that, and that's why I don't think wage labor will disappear. But what wage labor remains will be much more attractive because employers will be competing for workers rather than the other way around, and we won't have things like the business cycle, which is the result of the Federal Reserve and central banking, which then creates recessions and depressions periodically, which throw people out of work. And when that happens, of course, if people are nervous about losing their jobs and they put up with stuff they wouldn't put up with because they don't want to be the one who loses the job and then has trouble finding another job. Imagine if that all disappears because the central bank disappears. Now workers are empowered. And if they're not getting their health insurance from their employer, they can say to an employer who they find obnoxious, the heck with you. I'm out of here.
Also, the employer, from what I see in my own business, when I look at the cost of employing someone, the cost of business, if I could do away with all the state regulations, I would have so much more money. Like right now, I think for every hour one of my employees works, I pay about $10 an hour in a tax. Well, that $10, if the state was gone, would be negotiable now between the employee and the employer. You'd have so much more wealth where the employer's like, I don't know, I have all these things I have to pay to the government. Well, no, now you don't. Hey, I know that barrier is gone. Let's renegotiate my wages.
No, I agree with that completely. And health insurance is similar to that because the employee, given the tax system, the employee finds it to his benefit to take part of his pay in terms of insurance because that's pre-tax, unlike if he got cash, which would be a chunk would be taken away. So he'd be getting that money in the form of liquid cash, which is always preferable to a good or a service because you then have the option to use it the way you want. So I agree with that completely.
Here at our radio station, the employer's health insurance plan, the one that's offered to us, we can either choose to buy into it or have nothing at all. And what we have to choose to buy into would cost me so much. It would actually cost over half my paycheck just to get the health insurance. And because it's not mandatory, we choose not to participate. And therefore, we have that extra cash available at that point to do things like, I don't know, maybe feed my family. I really think that health insurance is one of the biggest scams and one of the biggest burdens that's been put on the worker.
Well, if you took the state, I believe, out of the equation, though, health insurance would be nil. It wouldn't cost anything because any Joe Blow
there wouldn't be health insurance. There wouldn't be health insurance at all.
Well, a lot of the things that they're forced to be insured now wouldn't be insured because they're technically not insurable. So insurance immediately would go down because insurance companies would stop insuring things they're mandated to insure. They could classify things better.
I think there'd be catastrophic. There'd be catastrophic type insurance to protect your wealth from your getting a serious illness. But you're right. There couldn't be insurance. There's not insurance for haircuts for obvious reasons.
Yes.
Well, for the same reason, there wouldn't be insurance for well baby care. That doesn't make any sense. What's insurance for well baby care? That's not an insurable event. Same thing with contraception use. That's not an insurable event. And you're right. That just raises the price of insurance, which prices people out of the market. And then the government can use that to say, look, there's people priced out of the market. We need more control over health insurance and medical care, which is, led us to Obamacare. And it's just a scam that helps big companies, basically.
Right, and it isn't the ultimate end state since they have to institute something like Obamacare because their mandates keep making it more expensive. More people opt out. Yep. And the more people opt out, the more expensive it gets. And so they make it mandatory so they can keep the cost down, but as we all know, that makes it more expensive, so eventually they'll have to ration it.
Right, because don't forget they've added into this what they call no exclusion for pre-existing conditions, right? So the companies have to cover you even if you're already sick, which of course that means it's not insurance. If they have to cover you when you're already sick, it's not insurance. It's a form of welfare.
It's redistribution.
But then we'll say, but wait a second. If you can get insurance after already being sick, if you can wait until you're sick to get insurance, that's going to screw things up. They say, okay, we have a fix for that. We'll force everyone to buy insurance. So it's Mises' whole point. One intervention creates the grounds for the next intervention, and so on. So the ultimate logic is, a complete centralization of power over medical care, or a complete reversal of all this and a movement toward a free market. But it's not going to be stable in between, because every intervention creates a problem, which then, unless we learn, get some wisdom, the politicians and the corporatists use to justify the next round of intervention.
So are we going to get to the point like they were in Rome, where you're not allowed to move and you're not allowed to change profession because that just makes it too hard to do the central planning?
Well, these things are hard to predict, but there is a certain logic toward further and further control because of what I just said, right? Every act creates some dislocation, and then someone says, yeah, but look at this big problem over here. They never related back to the original cause, which is the earlier regulation. So then they propose a new regulation.
That's because we're too pragmatic. You're just trying to think in terms of principles. We're pragmatic people. We look at the problem in front of us and deal with it as it is.
That's right. I love when people say, look, the heck with ideology. We need to judge these things on a case-by-case basis.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to sign off.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate the phone call here. And Sheldon, we are up against the break here at the top of the hour.
We've already kept him longer than
yes, you did.
he gave.
Thank you so much for participating with us today in the program. Are you interested in doing it again in the future?
I would love to. It was my pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was Sheldon Richman. And do we have a blog for you, Sheldon?
Yes, SheldonRichman.com will get you to free association. SheldonRichman.com.
All right,
excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
And we are coming up on the Fox News here at the top of the hour. If you are on hold, we're going to go ahead and keep you on and give you a chance to sound off on the other side. This is Patriots Lament on KFAR. It's Local Talk Radio 660 on your AM dial.
KFAR, Fairbanks, 660 AM. To you, this is Local Talk Radio, 660 AM.
If you love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, go from us in peace. We ask not your counsels or your arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were our countrymen. Samuel Adams.
The time is near at hand, which must determine whether Americans are to be free men or slaves. George Washington.
And what country can preserve its liberties if its rulers are not warned from time to time that this people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Thomas Jefferson.
Posterity, you will never know how much it cost the present generation to preserve your freedom. I hope you will make good use of it. If you do not, I shall repent in heaven that ever I took half the pains to preserve it. John Adams.
I sincerely believe that banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies, and that the principle of spending money to be paid by posterity under the name of funding is but swindling futurity on a large scale. Thomas Jefferson.
Government is instituted to protect property, this being the end of government. That alone is a just government, which impartially secures to every man whatever is his own. That is not a just government, nor is property secure under it, where arbitrary restrictions, exceptions, and monopolies deny to part of its citizens the free use of their own faculties. James Madison.
It would be an absurdity for jurors to be required to accept the judge's view of the law against their own opinion, judgment, and conscience. John Adams.
Whenever the legislators endeavored to take away and destroy the property of the people, or to reduce them to slavery under arbitrary power, they put themselves into a state of war with the people, who are thereupon absolved from any further obedience, and are left to the common refuge which God hath provided for all men against force and violence. John Locke.
It is in vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war has actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here, idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but for me, give me liberty, or give me death. Patrick Henry.
My people perish for the lack of knowledge. God.
Some people you can never please. You might as well just let them be. They mock everything not their own from their imaginary throne. But I won't bow down even if the whole world thinks I'm crazy. So hey, this song's for us. So put your hands in the air if you're crazy like us.
Welcome to Patriots Lament right here on KFAR. It's Local Talk Radio. I am Steve Floyd, the monkey behind the machine. Joining us in the studio, the Bennett brothers, the ones who came to me, actually almost, it was over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And saying, hey, can we do this show? And basically convincing me through the power of their capital to do this. But, you know, it's like anything else. If you believe something and you're willing to put your time, your money, your resources toward it, it will eventually come back in a way that is beneficial. What's that? There's an old ancient wisdom literature that says something about casting your bread upon the waters, right? You know what I'm talking about?
I was just thinking casting pearls before swine, but no.
All right, so we've got 3 lines that are on hold from the last hour.
Let's see if they stayed on.
458-TALK is the number. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
This is Martin. Good morning.
Go ahead. Good morning. Go ahead.
First, I would like to thank you for the program. I was discussing the program last night with a friend of mine, and those quotes that are read by those young people over the soundtrack, from which I think is Last of the Mohicans,
Yep.
is just so stunning. To think that there was a time when there were people who spoke like that and thought like that. It was a different age, and they worked real hard trying to set something up for the people of the colonies that would result in a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And maybe I'm missing something here, and I'm just going to throw this out. But September 11th, 2001, the World Trade Centers came down. And we were told, as I recall, and I could be wrong about all of this, that an organization called Al-Qaeda was responsible for this. And instantly, or shortly thereafter, a number of federal laws and regulations were put in place, the Patriot Act being foremost, that we were told was necessary to combat the threat that this organization and its minions pose to the people of this country. And it stomped heavily on our privacy act laws, and so anyway, this has been going on a long time, and these agencies like TSA were established, and the National Security Agency, and the CIA and the FBI were reinforced, and blah, blah, blah. The machine was fed and built and grown. And now this president is telling us that we are going to be arming Al-Qaeda. No beating around the bush. This is the follow-through on the fiasco in Benghazi.
Mm-hmm.
And if the people of this country do not, I've been very gratified to see this pushback in the last few weeks because it's so bad. The meltdown is so intense and so obvious that many people who have been sitting on the sidelines, and I'm guilty, I've said this before, I thought that my responsibility as a citizen of this country was to vote. Well, I tell you what, for this government to get this country involved in a war, a civil war in Syria, to tell the people that we are going to be sending arms to Al-Qaeda fighters it's one of a couple of things. Either it's an act of lunacy or it's part of an even bigger program. And if the people don't just say enough, we're not doing this anymore, then we are doomed. There is no way. If the people cannot just take it upon themselves to make this stop, to make an effort to turn this thing around, we're doomed. And those wonderful, beautiful quotes that I just listened to will be nothing but footnotes in history to what once was a pretty great country that just turned into a cesspool, or a poverty-stricken province of Mexico, or any number of ugly things. Folks, we need to do something to really be pushing back, telling these people this is the most corrupt, unbelievably corrupt. You know, we haven't heard a word from Hillary since when?
Yeah.
The whole thing is rotten to the core, and the administration and all the people in it at the top are rotten to the core, and the agencies that have been set up and strengthened for all these years become more and more rotten to the core, and nobody but the people. And I'd like to think it could be done through the federal legislature, that this could be done by people saying, enough, stop, leave the Second Amendment alone, forget about it, it's not on the table, we're not going to legalize millions of criminals, that's not the basis for citizenship in a country, a criminal act. And this thing with Syria, the fact that they will just come flat out, outright and say it, we're going to arm these people in a civil war that does not concern the United States of America in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. And before I get going, I just want people to think about one thing. Saddam Hussein may have been a real piece of evil work. I don't know if he was killing 30, 40, 50, or 60 Iraqi citizens a day. But since our involvement over there, that's how many of each other they're killing a day with these bombs.
Yep.
And the one person that could have prevented Iran from achieving a nuclear weapons capability would have been Saddam Hussein. He would have sacrificed the last Iraqi alive to prevent that. And we completely upset the entire... Was it an ugly balance of power? Certainly. But is the balance of power better for what we've done? The amount of money we spent and the number of lives, American and Iraqis, that have been lost on this thing? Not in the slightest. It's a stinking mess. Afghanistan, its only export is opium. And the people of this country either need to take it back or be prepared to be herded like cattle, because that's what's happening now. And some of us really don't like it at all. But it seems there's about, 30% of the people, I guess they could represent the Tories of the Revolutionary Warrior, or they're okay. They don't care anything about their liberties or freedoms. They don't care. But some of us do. And I can't... Am I wrong about this thing with Syria? Am I missing something?
No, absolutely not. I'm glad you brought it up, because I think it's just a smack right in our face. And I think what it really is that our federal government, our state, basically is telling us we will, can, and shall do whatever we want. And you serfs can shut up. We're going to start a war in 2001 and in 2003 under the guise of defeating Al-Qaeda and world terrorism. And then we're going to start a war. I mean, we've been backing them. It's going to come out someday. We started the war in Syria. We've been backing the war in Syria since day one. And now those same people that we supposedly had to go and lose American lives, kill somewhere in 1.4 million civilians have died total since the war in Iraq started, spent trillions of dollars, which money factors should be the least of our worries when we're talking about people's lives, And now we're going to arm the very people that we said that we needed that we needed the Patriot Act for. We needed the National Defense Authorization Act to have indefinite detentions for, to stop Al-Qaeda, and now we're arming them.
You know something? I wish that copies of the Constitution were the best-selling book or publication in the United States today. But 1984 is. And a lot of people my age who feel the way I feel now read that book a long time ago. And I have been watching everything that Orwell predicted coming true. You have to have the three sides constantly at odds with each other. You have one group of people, the proles, that the government doesn't monitor or watch. They don't produce anything. They're out of the loop. They're not, and then you got the enslaved working class who is being monitored to the point where the cameras in the TV are behind the mirror in every single dwelling of the middle class. The lower classes, they consume. They're no threat to the government. They don't care. And then you've got a very tiny group of people at the top that run it all and keep everything going the way they want it to. And I'm glad. If people are going to read a book that might get them to think about what's going on, but other people my age have been watching, but can't believe that Orwell was as prophetic as he was in how despotic the government can become and how evil, because it's not just a matter of employment or work or insurance. It's a matter of lives as well.
Yep.
And anyway, I really appreciate the program, and it's got the perfect name, The Patriots Lament, because what's going on today is absolutely lamentable.
I'd like to read a contrast that shows that. Benjamin Franklin said, "Any society that would give up a little liberty to gain a little security will deserve neither and lose both." Barack Obama said, "I think it's important to understand that you can't have 100% security and then have 100% privacy and zero inconvenience. We're going to have to make some choices as a society."
No, see, Barack Obama has said and done, it makes me stammer. And when I think about the fact that the people aren't completely ready to go into the streets over what's going on here, it just makes me stammer. I'm stammering now. I can't believe it can be as blatantly bad on so many different, on all levels of this government, from the administration to the bureaucracy, and the people are just, they're rioting in Turkey. They riot over soccer games in the world, and the people of the United States are real not into that mode.
That's because we've got American Idol to watch, and we've got pizza to eat, and we've got beer to drink, and we're happy.
Right on. That's exactly right. It's the Roman games,
Well,
Roman
also,
games, you keep the people occupied until they turn around. And that group of people who don't care aren't going to care about defending any of this.
people do care. I think the main reason, one of the things we have is, like what Steve just said, the American Idols, the pizzas, the football games and stuff like that. But there's something more important. Why don't people stand up? Why don't we riot? Why don't we do this or that? Why don't we protest at the very least? Why don't we protest every day? It's because we've been told that our avenue of change is to vote. And because if you can vote in a Republican, it'll be better. Well, I don't know. John McCain, last I look, is still a Republican, and Lindsey Graham is still a Republican. Those two war hawk idiots have been pushing to arm and attack Syria since day one.
I tell you what, I don't call, I told another talk show host on KFAR, the donkey and the elephant to me are symbols that are outdated. To me anymore, the Democrats their symbol should be the naked mole rat. And people like Lindsey Graham and John McCain should be the dung beetle, rolling around big balls of feces with their hind legs. These people are criminals. I mean, this is the thing. We're talking about treasonous criminal acts. They have put the shackles on me and everybody in this country using Al-Qaeda as an excuse, and now these dung beetles want to harm them.
Yep, and you brought up 1984, the book. I'm going to use that as a little segue. Aaron is putting together a package that we're going to try to offer and as cheap as possible and give away as many as we can of different books, because we're still of the opinion, right or wrong, we're going to hold this opinion, and our opinion is shared with John Adams when he said the Revolutionary War was not the actual fighting. The war was won with the people's minds and their hearts, because things like Common Sense were written, and Samuel Adams and James Madison, Thomas Jefferson were writing things. There was a war for the minds. If you look back, the Tories would counter everything that the Patriots wrote with something that would protect the king. So there was a war for the minds, and eventually, when the minds were won over, when the colonists decided we will be free, and they removed their consent from the dictator tyrant 4,000 miles across the ocean, it was won. The war was won, the victory was over with. It was just a matter of time before the British had to go. And that's what we want to do now. We want to educate people educate themselves, read some books. We're going to offer some books because we think that the war is for the mind and for the hearts. And even in this little, Aaron was talking to me the other day about it, he said, we could conceivably see Fairbanks, even this little community, where everyone here could read some of these books and have a semblance of liberty in their mind, just like Common Sense. Over 500,000 copies of Common Sense were purchased, and there was only 2 million people in the colonies at the time. So conceivably, every colonist either read or heard Common Sense. And they won the hearts and the minds of the people.
It makes me feel good to hear you say that, because in my conversation with my friend last night, Thomas Paine and the book Common Sense, we came into the discussion, he said, I got to take it slow. He says it's like reading scripture. But he got it at Barnes & Noble, and the next book I'm going to buy, probably today, is Common Sense.
You can download it free off Mises.
That ability to touch people's minds, you're right. You had to do that to get some farmer who just wanted to be left alone so he could have a little piece of the frontier and have his farm, to give that up, leave his family, and spend years fighting the greatest army in the world. You had to convince him in his mind that that was the right thing to do.
You can go to Mises.org if you have a computer, or anybody else is listening, and you can download Common Sense for free.
What is that?
Mises, M-I-S-E-S. It's the Ludwig von Mises Institute, with Lou Rockwell is started years ago, and a number of other libertarian thinkers started. It's M-I-S-E-S, Mises.org. You can get just about anything book-wise, especially Liberty writings, for free there. You download it straight to your deal. You can get The Law by Bastiat. You can get The Politics of Obedience by Etienne de la Boete. You get the whole thing. You can get The Market for Liberty. You can get the Economics in One Lesson. All these things are out there for free on the Mises Institute. You can download it right to your computer and have at it.
Or right to your phone if you like it that way.
Right to your phone.
Well, I hate to sound so primitive, and I do appreciate the information. I will go look at it today. But I enjoy sitting down with a hard copy in my hand.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with that.
I think a lot of people do. That's why we're going to start pushing for people to... Basically, I want to set up where people can get a hold of me and I can get some books in their hands. And the way we want to structure it is it'll come with a little study guide explaining, how to go through these books. The books that I picked out are all on the simpler side, not because I think people are dumb. It's just, the faster the better. And the way I want to set it up is it's called a family packet. You get the whole family can be involved because one of the books is for 8 to 13, 14-year-olds, and the other one's for 14 up to 20. But, as an adult, they're both good reads also for an adult. And after you go through all these books, they basically successfully soften you up to the ideas of anti-statism. And so I'm going to make a package available for people to buy. And if they buy 2 packages, I'll make it as cheap as I can, of course, right out the gate. But they buy 2 packages, the other one's to give away to promote liberty. So the callers or the audience can get involved in promoting liberty. And if they buy our ultimate package, to show that I'm not in doing this for any kind of profit motivation, I'm going to match their packet and give a bunch away myself. And we'll we'll say where they're going on the air, and maybe we can get some feedback from people to see if it's changing their lives at all.
There's also something to be said about having a hard copy to take someplace like out to Galena.
Yeah,
or other
these would all
places
be
where they
hard
don't
copies.
have the internet connection, or to a place where, like, well, for instance, Galena, where they just got hit with a flood and basically everything is wiped out. What are people going to be doing with their time?
Reading some Liberty books.
There you go. Exactly.
And then when you're done reading them, pass them off to your friends.
Exactly.
And pass them off to your friends. We appreciate your phone call today, and we got to get moving with some other ones, but thank you for all your comments, and thanks for talking to your friends about the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the show.
Thanks for calling. 458-TALK is a number. See if anybody is still on here. Good morning. Who's this?
Hello?
Hey, who is this?
This is Tommy Light.
Tommy Light, all right, otherwise known as Token.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to work with Aaron.
Okay.
Well, first I'd like to say to all my class enemies, good morning, you guys.
Morning.
Can I respond a little bit to what
Didn't
that
think
guy
we
said?
believe in classes. Go ahead.
Okay. This started with you, Josh. I didn't say that Americans cause exploitations of those other workers overseas. I say Americans profit from them. And what your hired gun said was, he offered two choices. He said, either accept the abuse and exploitation of these workers or boycott and they get no jobs. And there's another choice. I was over the hill from the Marine Corps for about a year back in the late 70s, and I went to work at an electronics firm when Silicon Valley was booming, and I worked my way up from the assembly line for about $3.40 an hour, and eventually they trained me to be a purchasing agent. And you can put out to bid anything you want, and that's the treatment. That's the third choice this guy didn't mention. He just says either accept the exploitation and profit from it or boycott them, they get no jobs. And the other choice is what people are trying to implement right now is you just put out part of the bid package for all the merchandise you're consuming is to just working conditions.
Oh, I gotcha. No, that's a good idea. Where you you set up on a bid.
Correct.
Part of
Whatever you
your
want.
scope of work has to have these conditions in your facility, in your warehouse, in your whatever. These things must be met or we will not purchase.
Correct. And that's what they're trying to do.
That's not a bad thing.
Okay, well, and that's all. And here's one basic difference, and I'll let you go, and thank you for indulging me, is maybe this is where we disagree. I'm trying to be a self-appointed advocate for people like me, just really messed up, screwed up, loser people like me. And it's really rough, you guys. It's like homeless people have a 20-year shorter life expectancy than middle-class Americans. And this is what I want. I want to move from point A to point B to get idiots like me to something better. You know, and I want to use what we got and get some results. And that's my basic thing. And thank you for letting me get back in a little bit.
Well, I appreciate. I mean, I've got to talk to you not as long as maybe we should have, but I, for one, don't think you're an idiot at all. In fact, even Jim and Kenai, no, we've talked about you at length before, and we've always enjoyed your phone calls because you give us something else to think about from a different point of view, and you actually think the things through, and you have a very well thought out mind. The things you say. We do not think you're an idiot, and we encourage you to call because we're not against you. We don't like the fact that there's homelessness out there. We maybe have different ways or avenues to seek what we want to see, but ultimately, we want to see everyone do well. And our focus mostly is against the state because we think that the state is the one that puts these things into place, that put people in that position. I think that the state is the reason why churches aren't out there and people, individuals aren't out there helping homeless people, helping people get up on their feet, helping people get into positions of power. It's because the state's done it, so the individual is deciding, why do I need to do it? We'll just let the state take care of it. And the state does not care.
Letting the state, in some cases, you will get in trouble for helping people.
And the state
May I respond?
Yeah.
This guy gave me this book called Rothbard's for a New Liberty.
Yeah.
And I read it, and Rothbard, one of the things he writes in his book is that the Mormons are doing just exactly what you're talking about, people not doing because of the state interfering.
Mm-hmm. The Mormon Church has done a great job taking care of their people.
We're up against the clock. You want to?
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Gerald.
458-TALK is the number if you'd like to call in and participate on Patriots Lament right here on KFAR. Right back after the Fox News.
This is KFAR. Fox News is now.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Colorado's most destructive wildfires now 45% contained.
The good news is we didn't lose any more land, and we did not lose any more structure.
El Paso County Sheriff Terry Makita just now on the fire, which has so far destroyed 473 homes. Arson investigators are trying to work on the point of origin.
2 people have died in this fire, and they're still saying at this point that they do not believe that this was caused by lightning or a rock slide. They think that this was human caused.
Fox's Alicia Acuna, a new missing person report has been filed. Federal investigators expected in Louisiana at the site of an explosion last night that killed 1 worker at a chemical plant in Donaldsville. There was another chemical plant blast in the area on Thursday. And a moderate cleric, Hassan Rouhani, has been declared the winner of Iran's presidential election. Fox News. We report, you decide.
This is where you can turn to confirm that the world is okay for another day. News Talk 660 KFAR.
Welcome back to Patriots Lament right here on KFAR. I'm Steve Floyd, the man with the face made for radio. Basically nothing more than the monkey behind the machine pushing buttons, sometimes randomly, just to see what happens.
I went up to Natalie Howard's last night, and I had a great time up there. Yeah, a lot of good people. I want to tell everybody that was there that engaged me in lively conversation that I had a good time. You guys are all good people. It was pretty funny. I walked when I first got there. I just kind of stood around silent, and everybody was having different conversations about when they were a statist and how they came out of being a statist and that point in their life and when they opened their eyes to what was really going on. So when somebody finally said something to me, I felt like I was at Alcoholics Anonymous. So I was like, I'm a stateaholic. I'm Aaron Bennett.
Oh.
It's just funny. I started to think about it in those terms. It's almost that bad, where you become a stateaholic.
No, it is that bad because once you talk about how people came out of when they were a statist. I'm in the same boat. I used to be a statist and I didn't even realize I was a statist. And just like an alcoholic, you get one sip and you can get right back into it.
Sure, you can.
Look at how many of us here in Alaska take the permanent fund dividend?
Or just when you start digressing and talking about, when you start going backwards and talking about, your constitutional rights and things like that, and you have to stop and realize, well, wait a minute, the Constitution gave me nothing. You're a free man even without it.
And before it.
And before it, exactly.
No, that is probably the hardest thing to get people to realize that, that's my constitutional right. Hey, that's not good.
If you're ever interested in hanging out with a bunch of people that might be, you could basically be on the show and have the same kind of thinking. Natalie Howard's thing every 2 weeks.
Well, it's not necessarily her thing. It's the Campaign for Liberty, the book meetup.
But they do it at her house.
Yeah, I think they have been.
Yeah. That's a good place to go hang out. She's pretty open to just about anybody coming there. At least that's what she just texted me, so I don't think I'm speaking out of turn.
Except for status socialist?
Well, actually, that's not true either. Randy was there, and so I guess it's accept everyone as they are.
Come as you are. We'll baptize you in the fire of liberty.
It was a good time, and if I don't know, if you were one to hang out with like-minded people, you listen to the show or something and think, man, I wish there was people out there that thought like I did. Well, that's a good place to go. I enjoyed myself.
And there's a big difference, too, between going and having a face-to-face conversation with somebody where you can ask them questions as opposed to something like this, even calling into the radio show where we have time constraints and where we have, interest. You have to basically keep it interesting. And if somebody comes in and has a hard time with getting their point across, we might have to move on before they've actually gotten their point across, or as opposed to going and have a conversation over a cup of coffee with somebody. You
have more
or a couple of beers.
Oh, heck yeah.
Were there adult beverages involved?
There was adult beverages involved. I mean, how else could I have spent the evening with Scott Walker?
Oh.
I'm just kidding.
But let's go to the phone.
All right, 458 Talk is the number. This is Patriots Lament. Who's this?
Hey, this is Rick.
Rick, what's on your mind?
Hey, Rick, how you doing?
Hey, good. Hey, Aaron.
Hey, how you doing?
Funny, you were talking about last night, and we were having that conversation about sovereignty.
Yeah.
And I got to thinking about it. It's like, well, we never really defined what we meant by that. And I got to looking in the dictionary this morning, and sovereignty is defined as the quality or state of being sovereign. And then I go to sovereign. It says a person who has sovereign power. And so it's like what kind of an explanation is that?
Well, it's exclusive right to self-rule.
I think one of the dictionary definitions actually has in there, it probably doesn't anymore, it was an older version I was reading online, that in the United States it's assumed that sovereignty is delved on the people, which is pretty interesting.
Well, the comment last night, a gentleman said that he was talking about sequences of events and losing, those events were making us lose our sovereignty. And I made this statement that you can lose your sovereignty. And I equated it to, like you've talked about the Miranda rights before, that it's such a joke that, like the guy in Boston, they said, well, we're not even going to read his Miranda rights. And basically they're saying because we're not going to read them to him, he didn't have those rights.
Yeah.
Those rights aren't inherently his. They're not inherent in him. And that's the same idea of saying, we're losing our sovereignty. How can you lose your sovereignty? Are those just... If I grab Josh's arm and move it up and down, I'm controlling his arm, but I can't actually ever control his arm because only he can do that. I can force his arm up and down, but only he can control his arm. You can't lose your sovereignty.
Right, but see, and my thing was like, well, can I contractually give away my sovereignty?
And my reply to that was, it's not yours to give up.
Yeah, right, and that's why I wanted. It's like, well, what do we really mean by that? Because I was having a struggle with that, I guess.
Right, and Josh kind of covered that this morning when he was talking about private property.
Oh well, I kind of missed that because of those adult beverages.
Well, the exclusive right to private property would be obviously yourself also. And everybody recognizes everybody else's right to private property just when they engage with somebody else. When you argue with somebody, you're admitting that they have a right to their own private property.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's Hans Herman.
Yep.
Well, Madison said that it is just as you have a right to your property, you equally have property in your rights. Property to your rights.
Right, and you cannot give up your sovereignty.
That's why we always talk about property so often, or try to. I mean, we kind of bounce around other things, but property is the most important thing of all. It is the foundation of liberty, private property. Because when you understand that your rights are your property, and you have a property of your rights, and Madison, he's actually taken a lot from John Locke and that thing that we read in the beginning, which, sorry if it bored people, but got to learn something.
Right. Hey, the other thing I wanted to say, too, is as far as the book club goes, we meet in various places. Just happens to be the last couple times we have met at Natalie's.
What's the website for your guys' book?
If you go to the Campaign for Liberty or Google Campaign for Liberty Fairbanks, it'll pop up there, and then you can go in and look around, and that it'll have the next meeting and what it's about, and usually there's a link to whatever we're reading, or this last time we did a podcast, so you go and listen to that, and then we discuss that, or not, depending. So, but everybody's welcome, all viewpoints. Don't like somebody getting up on the pedestal and starting to spout off, but anybody's welcome to give their view, but
sure, that's what it's all about.
Right.
And you can actually, if you get on the Campaign for Liberty Fairbanks chapter on the website, you can join that, and you'll get an email notification for everything that's going on.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a great place for meeting like minds, as Aaron said.
Yep.
All right, thanks for the call.
Okay.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. Take care, man.
I think they should change the name of it to Status Anonymous.
I like that. 458 Talk is the number. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
Yeah, good morning, Frank Turner here.
Hey, Frank. How's it going, brother?
It's a beautiful, great show there, and I heard Gerald call in, the homeless man.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't show up at 1 o'clock, he's fired. Little humor there, Gerald. I'll see you at 1. But I'd like to make a community service announcement. I've always believed that we need an educational revolution in our state and throughout this country without any bloodshed. And, wow, I think that the Patriots Lament Show has been providing that. And thanks to you, Josh, and Aaron, and Steve Floyd, and many of your guests that come on your show for playing that important part of an educational revolution. And I tell you, I just encourage more parents to get their kids out of those perverted schools and homeschool and educate our families.
That's right.
And thank you, and I hope your day goes fast and your evening slow.
Thank you, Frank. Appreciate it.
458 Talk is the number. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
This is Frank.
Frank, what's on your...
The main thrust of what you're talking about is civil rights. And I wanted to point out that our great trading partner, China, each and every day performs approximately 40,000 forced abortions. Now, you talk about civil rights. And this is our friend, our buddy, our partner. And I'll tell you, there's atheistic materialism, which we absolutely are, and dialectical materialism of the Marxists are too close akin. We've become allies of each other. And this is one problem I have with the libertarians. They are, for the most part, atheistic materialists, self-centered, and they will not win the game. They will go against such a parallel concept that they can never win. Because anyway, especially when they pass this the homosexual marriage, this country is dead. Its heart and soul and fabric of its society has died. And I pray the judgment of God destroys this country and brings it to its knees. I have nothing else to say. There's not much else to say.
Well, there is some... Well, then we get to say something back. Aaron, I mean, we here are actually libertarian anarchists, or free market anarchists, libertarians, whatever. We're also Christians. And we absolutely detest abortion, 100%. I detest abortion in China, the 40,000 a day or however many it is. But it is the thing that we talk against. It is the state, the Chinese state, that forces that to happen. We detest that. We detest that the American state, the U.S. state, gives money to China for those abortions. We detest that the U.S. state gives money to anybody, where my money's stolen from me and used towards, well, anything actually, but actually used towards abortions. We detest that. But we also detest the gay marriage thing in the fact that the state says it has a right to tell who and what can be married. We think it's none of the state's business to license anyone. The state has no business licensing man and woman. The state has no business licensing man and woman and woman. The state itself is the one that needs to disappear. And I, too, pray that God will judge the state of America and destroy it.
Let me
end it.
If I can, just kind of dovetail off of that. I'm not sure Frank could hear your response back to him. He hung up. But to address the concerns of the people who are watching the traditional values of America being perverted, whether you're talking about homosexuality, like now the Boy Scouts are going to be required to accept openly gay, not just leaders, but also openly gay boys, and there's so many things that are wrong with that. I don't even know what to say about that. The abortion issue, all of these other things. How do you force someone to change their mind? If you are a Christian and you are concerned with somebody else's sin, how do you force them to repent?
You pass a law.
Which I think is funny because the Republicans use that excuse all the time to keep retaining their powers to pass all these laws to stop things like that. But who's always on the winning side? Immorality is always on the winning side when the state's involved because the system itself's immoral.
Exactly. I mean, when you're going to go and use force on someone, violence or threat of violence, you are committing a sin yourself.
Yeah, if we didn't have the state, Steve, people would be killing babies and being just openly gay.
Frank has the last
look on your face.
The last Frank caller has a really good point. He brought up some things that are happening, but he's talking about the result.
Right.
Abortion's result, the gay marriage thing result. What is the actual cause? That's what we try to talk about here, is the cause. You got to chop the cause at the roots. Then the fruits don't come. Mm-hmm. Chop the roots to kill the fruits.
Huh, I like that.
I'm going to copyright that and patent it. Even though I don't believe in IP, today I do.
Make a T-shirt out of it and sell it to all your friends. All right, you just said something that lit up all the phones here. 458-TALK is the number. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
Good morning. This is Bo Cephas.
Bo Cephas. All right. Hey.
The real one?
Okay, so I have an idea here. I've noticed that when you listen to a borough meeting or you attend one, that when the borough attorney speaks, that everybody gets the deer in the headlights look, and some of the more educated people roll their eyes. So I was thinking that when we pay our federal taxes, we can check a box to donate money towards the presidential fund. How about if we had a little box on our borough tax bill that way we could donate an extra $2 or $5 towards a constitutional people's attorney to attend all borough meetings and contest the borough attorney. Not anything against her personally. If you get hurt on the job and you go to a company's doctor, I can guarantee you're going to get screwed because they're in the pocket of the company.
Right.
So if we have a borough attorney working for the man, and everybody in there, not everybody, but most people in there who are halfway educated would realize that the chicanery that goes on.
That's a pretty good idea. Unfortunately, we would have to ask the borough to implement that, and anything that the borough is going to implement to take away some of their power ain't going to happen.
Well, we
I
start
like the
slow
idea.
in the next election and work towards that goal. But, I mean, Robert's Rules of Order, I don't think people really know what that is anymore.
They don't even follow Robert's Rules of Order at the borough meeting. I mean, how can you possibly think that you're going to solve the problem through a political solution, even by getting an attorney involved here? It's just...
I think we got rid of the borough government. We would not need any of that.
You're an
That's just my
idealist.
own-
I agree. Thanks for the
And
show.
thanks for the call.
Thanks for calling.
458 Talk is the number. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
Good morning,
Hey, who is this?
Cecily.
Hi, Cecily. What's on your mind?
Well, my brother said they're about to attack another, a person who keeps too many treasures in their yard. I was wondering if there's a way to find out who and when they're going to do it. I know my brother knows who it is, but I don't know when, and I thought maybe we could surround his place and keep the borough thieves from stealing his stuff. Is that a possibility?
Who is it?
My brother Michael knows the person who. It's a person who has like a junkyard,
Right.
lots of stuff, and the borough, they built a road across his property without informing him too. But now they want to take him down because of what they did. So I'm sure those borough people know exactly who they're about to attack. If you have a friend on there, maybe you could find out, and it would be great.
Yeah.
I would definitely find somebody with a car to get down there with too, and bring some posters or.
Is it a borough or city thing?
It might be a city, but aren't they connected with all that they're doing?
No, they're not. And they have different machinations of force, too.
They're separate evils.
Yeah.
Oh, so we'd have to find somebody in the city. Well, I think I know somebody who actually works there for them, but if there was a possibility, I could put that on the air when that is, so that people could come down. Or
You can you can call on Problem Corner for sure, Cecily, and let people know. That way, you talk about why don't people protest. Here's a great opportunity to go out there and put your body in between the statist who's trying to steal.
Yeah, but if it's a city, they have police powers. They'll just shoot everybody.
They could.
well, yeah, they said they have the police officers has you stand there and watch everybody steal your stuff. Well, and then they film it also on the news to show everybody how that they can come in.
And they will do it too. Well, yeah. Funny, if they're doing the right thing, I wonder why they need police to go with them.
Did you see the protesters in Turkey that were taking the tear gas cans and throwing them back at the police? Isn't that an awesome thought? Just thinking about the police that are out there to force people to do something. What if they got hit with tear gas?
I don't know. What if everybody in Fairbanks showed up down there and told them to get bent?
Well, the
They're
officer,
supposedly doing the will of the people, right?
the officer was telling my brother, apologizing and telling him he knew that this was wrong.
But he did it anyway.
He was ordered to by the mayor, Jerry Cleworth.
If you are ordered to go and put your foot on somebody's throat and blow their brains out, do you follow the order just because you've been given an order, or do you do what you think is right?
No, Steve.
Well, as a police officer, if you're going to get paid on a regular basis or not fired for not, following the orders of your boss.
The Nuremberg trials showed us that you do what your boss says no matter what. There's no moral higher law.
Much better to do what you're told and not get fired than to be thrown into hell for committing murder.
well, they just held him by the side of the road while they watched him steal all my brother's property. But the thing is he couldn't. He has his family to feed, and what other job can he get? And that's the same with the TSA. I was standing in a grocery line, and there was a guy in a uniform, and I was wondering what the uniform was about, and it said TSA, and I said to the cashier, I said, "Oh yeah, this guy, he makes his living by touching people in their private places without their permission." And the guy said, "Well, what's going on with today and the safety?" And I said, "You deserve neither if you give up." And so after a few minutes of talking to that guy and telling him that, this is a horrible thing that he was doing. He finally left in embarrassment.
Good. Oh, my goodness. Wow, that's wonderful.
Fantastic.
Hey, Cecily, thank you very much for the phone call. Remember to call here on Problem Corner and let us know when you find out who and when that's taking place.
And way to mock a state.
Exactly. That's awesome. We have less than 5 minutes left. Do you want to try to squeeze in a couple more calls here if we can? 458-TALK is the number. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
This is Billy. How you doing?
Hillbilly. Good. What's on your mind?
I'll blow a real quick trumpet so somebody else can get into. The Bible answer is not to try to chop down the tree. The good Lord has already got the axe laid to the root of the tree. He knows how to chop it down, and he'll chop it down in his own sweet time. What we need to do is get out of the way of the tree. So when it's
nice.
Out from among them and be ye separate. That is going to be the answer. Everyone is going to run to the hills. The righteous are those who run to the hills in time. But the Bible says the unrighteous will run to the hills at the last minute, too. They'll call for the hills to fall on them. I'm just calling a clear call here. Come out from among them. Christians are supposed to have their own communities. And we're going to do it eventually, even if we have to live in holes in the ground. So might as well do it now while we got the resources. Pledge your fortunes to freedom and get out of Babylon.
That's an excellent call. Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right. 458-TALK is the number. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
They will call the hills to fall.
Are you still there?
Hello.
Hey, who is this?
Hey, this is Claudio.
Claudio. What's on your mind?
How are you doing, guys?
Good.
Hey, people are concerned about, all the abortion things, and now you are supporting the Al Qaeda that they are eliminating a whole village of Christians in Syria. So, it's a moot point when you count against abortion and then supporting, have this government, our government that's supposed to be us, killing a lot of people there. But they're brown, of course.
They're brown. That doesn't matter. They're brown.
Well, and Jim mentioned something to me here by email that imposing Christian morals, we've been doing that for quite a while. It killed 700,000 people in the Civil War. Killed how many people in the Philippines, Aaron, when we decided we need to Christianize the Philippines?
Just over 100,000.
Indians? When we had to Christianize the Native American Indians? How many of them did they kill? How many Iraqis have we killed to bring Christian democracy to Iraq? Christian democracy to Libya? Christian democracy now to Syria?
And the people need to realize that abortion became a problem not because you legalized it. It became a problem because a moral went down to the gutter. And that's why abortion became legal, not became legal because they're around.
The biggest problem with Christians today, Claudio, is, and I know you agree with this, is that they are fully anti-abortion when the child's in the womb. But then when it's out of the womb and turns 18, they're all for it. Go kill and be killed.
As long as they're outside of our border.
Yeah, exactly.
And, quick question, quick thing is, you kill... I think that abortion thing and that anti-gay thing is just a fight that they want to do it. It's not really because they're so concerned about, most of them.
Yep.
It's because they have a political point for them to fight. Instead they fight for freedom, they fight for those things.
They're getting us to fight, and that's their political power when they're running for re-election.
We fight each other instead of fighting the state.
That's right.
Thanks for the call.
Thanks, Claudio.
Gentlemen, we're at the end of the show. Contact information.
PatriotsLament.blogspot.com.
And we'll get some contact information for getting books here on the next show.
PatriotsLament@gmail.com is the email. Come on, email us. No one emails us or anything. And Jim and Kenai, he's now a contributor to the blog, so actually smart things will be on there, so you can go to it and learn something.
I'll start reading it now.
Me too.
An action point for next week.
For next week?
No, I mean, for this week. What do you do now? Action point?
Go read a book. I mean, that's all we always say, but that's the biggest thing they can do.
See you next week on KFAR.
Mises.org. Download this.
Don't touch that dial. Fairbanks is listening. 660 AM.